Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Breakouts, a podcast where we interview extraordinary founders in just under 20 minutes. I'm your host, Akkshay Khosla. Now, you'll find many podcasts out there that are 2 to 3 hours long and interview these wildly successful founders after they've already made it big. But by that point, the founders are already 5, 10, or even 15 years into their journey, so their insights just aren't as actionable anymore. We're doing things a little bit different. We're interviewing founders that are on the cusp of breaking out so that you can learn the playbooks they're using to build category-defining companies today. And we're doing it in just under 20 minutes. Now, just before we get started, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at The Breakouts Pod, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and join our Discord community for aspiring founders. The link is in the description below. And I think that's everything I have for you. So without further ado, here's today's guest. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of The Breakouts. Today, we have a really interesting guest for you. We have Jeff Wilson, the co-founder and CEO of Jupe. Now, Jeff has recently raised a $9.5 million seed round for a startup, and he's here to talk to us today in part one about how his startup works, what's been his story to this point, and how he thinks about winning the industry. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm still alive, man. I'm here, upright and breathing.
That's great to hear. So, Jeff, as you know, you're going to be with us for 2 episodes. In this first episode, we're going to focus on the story behind your startup and how you think about winning the industry. And the second episode is going to be about strategies, tactics, and hacks that you use to build your business. Now, to get us started, if you had to describe what your startup does and what problem you're trying to solve, what would you say?
So Jupe provides all the software and all the infrastructure to drag and drop an entire village anywhere on Earth on any raw piece of land in a day.
Wow. So if you want to set up a village with multiple houses, like we're talking like 10, 20 houses, you can use Jupe and go set it up and just establish a village anyway.
That's the vision, right? We're on our MVP right now, but yeah, Starlink, Zoom rooms, hard tops, saunas, or whatever you want, right? There's millions, hundreds of millions of acres of land around the world that is gorgeous. And folks would probably want to hang out on if they could just get like a oat milk latte and a gigabit internet connection, which hopefully Elon will get us there. Not the latte part. We're not letting that fucker touch our lattes.
Good call. That is crazy. I love that concept. We'll dive in deeper just in a bit. But right before we get there, I'm curious, what is your background? What's been your journey so far and what's led you to this startup?
So started out in tech. When the dot-com bubble crashed, went out in the desert, swore off tech and everything about it forever. Became an environmental science professor. And towards the end of my time there, I said, you know what, mix it up a little bit. I'm going to do an experiment around waste and living on less. So I convinced the university to let me move into a 33 square foot trash dumpster for a year and live behind the dorms. So I sold everything I owned for $1 an item, literally down to one backpack, and learned a lot about, let's call it off-grid living, about living on less, a sort of minimalist approach to energy consumption and stuff. And actually at the end of that year, I moved out and I left academia and started my first housing startup based on a lot of stuff I learned in that dumpster.
That is insane. I think that is the craziest story that we've heard so far on this podcast. How did you convince the university? Which university was it?
Well, it was in Austin. It was a smaller university in Austin. I had been at the University of Texas system, and then I was at a smaller system there. And I remember right after I signed my job offer to start this job, I waited till I had signed. I went to the provost, my boss, and was like, hey, I don't know if any of the other professors, when I was interviewing, mentioned this little project I want to do. She's like, well, like, you need a little budget for something I can do. I said, no, they didn't mention anything about the dumpster. And she was like, dumpster? And I told her, and she said, yeah, I thought there was something a little bit off about you. But in the end, I mean, it ended up being an awesome experience. I played this character called Professor Dumpster that was like a cross of Bill Nye and Oscar the Grouch, maybe. And I'd go talk to kids' schools about sustainability and stuff. And it was the ultimate dog fooding, right? When we talk about dog food, right? Like I was literally living in my project, which I've done in the last two startups as well. One we're doing now, Jupe, and the one in between the dumpster and Jupe.
Are you calling us from a Jupe?
I am not. I'm at my ranch right now outside of Austin visiting my parents. I am trying to convince them to have Jupapalooza 2023 here. Drop about 100 Jupes out on our field, but I'm not quite there. I got to work on mom and dad a little bit first.
That's so interesting. So tell me about Jupe. I feel like Jupe is such a great name. How did you come up with it? What's the story behind that?
Yeah, so we were called Simple Structures. I mean, come on. And we were at dinner, I think celebrating maybe our first check. And one of the folks at the company, actually, my partner at the time, said, you guys, this name sucks. I think what you guys need to do is base something, think big. Okay. I think you guys should think bigger than Mars. Elon's being a little lazy just going to Mars. Let's go one planet more and you get about a 400x. Much bigger planet called Jupiter, right? You guys should name it some ridiculous ass Silicon Valley name like Zoom, Zoox, Jewel, Uber. She was like, you should just call the company Jupe. And we were like, oh, that's hilarious. We didn't change it, everything. So to make the story short, I looked up jupe.com, which you had commented on earlier, right? Before we hopped on, like, wow, how'd you get this URL? Turned out it was owned by some guy in Northern California that his high school nickname was Jupe, and he was into affordable housing. And I just wrote him and said, look, bro, we're trying to sell affordable housing. Eventually cut us a break. He sold it to us for almost nothing. I was like, all right, we're Jupe.
Wow, that's awesome.
So 400X. Watch out, Elon. Our little tiny homes are coming for you.
That is crazy. Oh my God. So tell us a little bit more about Jupe. How does it work? Who are your customers?
Yeah. So our go-to-market, we found this really interesting go-to-market, which is in this kind of high-end camping, right? Some people call it glamping, right? So what this is for folks that aren't familiar with it, it's kind of like a starter drug to camping or getting into the outdoors, right? You've got like a really comfortable mattress and like maybe you've got a decent shower and bathroom. You're not like sleeping on the ground, right? While there's snow covering your tent.
Sounds like it's designed for me. So
yeah, so it's designed for a lot of folks actually. So what we're able to do is we find somebody with a raw piece of land or an existing Airbnb with a big backyard. And we say, hey, we're going to come and drag and drop our rooms there. And then we're going to split the upside. So you just had this raw piece of land in nature that was earning nothing, right? And so now we can just drop in these Jupes and the next day we can be renting them and paying you a rev share on it. So it's more of a SaaS type model, right? I call it SaaS. It's a little bit of an eye roll, short stay as a service. But rather than me just selling a home once, which isn't a great business, right? Now we have a recurring revenue model. And the lifetime value, if you want to start using SaaS kind of terms, is mid triple figures. Pretty good business.
Wow. That's crazy. So who would be the
Six
people?
Figures, I'm sorry. Triple figures, 6 figures.
6 figures. Yeah. There we go. Okay. That's a good clarification to make.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, are you setting up all the Jupes yourself or do you contract them out to other companies and the companies go and set them up?
No, we set them up. So one of our sort of differentiators is that we don't ship air. These things flat pack down and then pop up. So for instance, if you were to tow an Airstream, right, you've got one big truck, you've got one Airstream. We can actually fit 15 flat pack Jupes on one normal flatbed trailer. So we get a 15x delivery efficiency right there, right? So I can send a couple of guys, they go set these up in a couple of hours each, and you're sort of ready to go. So all Jupe does is we make the software that both allows for booking and the management of the units, the IoT, right? So we're putting little Raspberry Pis in these things and be able to push software updates through to them like you would at Tesla. And then we also make the quote hard tech, which will include the batteries, bathrooms, tent, hard tops, And then we don't mess with buying land or operating, right? So those are the really heavy, slow, hard to scale aspects of this type of business. So we just chose the things to do really well that were much more scalable.
Very cool. And do you guys make the actual, like, I guess, Jupe itself?
Yeah. So the Jupe itself is actually a chassis product, like a skateboard chassis, if you're familiar with those in the electric vehicle space. And then that skateboard chassis allows, like a car chassis, for all different things to be done on it, right? So we manufacture that chassis. Right now we drop a tent on it, but we could also drop normal stick-built home. We could drop a 3D printed structure on it, and then we can put stuff under it, right? So right now it sits on the ground and acts as the foundation, but we're working on pontoons. I'm really wanting to float the entire Mississippi myself in a Jupe, or you can put them in floodplains, right? When the water comes up now, you can build in these places that you normally wouldn't build. So yeah, we do all that stuff ourselves, and we're really efficient at manufacturing.
Very cool. I'm curious, what's your business model? How do you guys make money off of this?
So the business model is this, of course, stay as a service kind of thing. So let's say you have this epic piece of land up in the Catskills, right? And you haven't really had time to build a house on it or wanted to put together the money. You would come to us and say, hey, does my land fit for a Jupe compound? We'd say, oh, all right. People are paying $350, $400 a night at the Auto Camp Catskills right now for a tent. Okay. Looks like it's a pretty good market. We're going to drop these, put them on our booking platform, cross-list them on Airbnb, and then we're going to pay you a cut. So there is minimal to no upfront CapEx for you, right? And it's very light to go in and out. So we leave no trace. So it's a great win-win deal, right? For both sides of it, because a lot of folks, you probably don't want to operate a hotel. You don't want to build one, right? We can go in and just drop all the infrastructure and software and then find somebody locally to clean it.
Very interesting. When you drop these on these different sites, do you usually have to go back and pick them up? Are these short-term agreements, or do you just keep them there for a long time?
We generally keep them there, right? We try to place them in markets where it just makes sense for the landowner and us to keep them there. And also this product is not we're looking to build a kind of 5-minute pop-up product that we'll eventually use in a much more dynamic supply kind of way, right? So the season really falls off in the Catskills in the winter. So if we had, say, we could load 30 on a truck and it only took 10 or 15 minutes to pop them up, well, then middle of the winter, we could take them down to wherever the hottest market is, right? We could run them down to Baja, California. And we get really fast, right? We can pop them up at Burning Man for an event, right? Take them down to Coachella. We would be down in Florida right now, right? After Hurricane Ian, providing housing. So you've got this opportunity now for the first time ever to have a really comfortable living situation that is also highly flexible and dynamic so that you can match housing and infrastructure supply to demand, which has never been possible.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I'm curious about, so you mentioned that right now it takes about 2 hours to set these things up, and there is human labor involved in that.
Yep.
Do you think that your journey in going to this 5-minute pop-up model is going to be more or less powered by robotics and automation? Because as soon as you said that, the number one thing I thought was, hey, this thing could be like a transformer. Like,
oh, yeah.
Like the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. The idea eventually is it's kind of a push a button thing, right? My envision, I would love to just have one platform, right? A literal platform and a platform, right? But a literal platform with a screen, right? Kind of like the Tesla, what they did when they just got rid of all the gauges, all the crap, right? That screen would allow you to basically pop the thing up, transform it, or maybe turn that platform into from a bedroom to, say, a dining room, right? Say to maybe bunk beds coming up. So that would be the kind of cool shit of the future. But, you know, you got to start somewhere.
That sounds crazy. That's such an inspiring vision. What about your competitors? Are there competitors in this space? Do you know of any other companies?
So I think we're in this sort of middle new, everybody wants to claim they have a new category, so I'm not going to claim that, but we're in a new category. We're creating a new category.
Nice. That's the way to go.
No, if you look at it, there are things like tents and yurts that have been around literally like as long as we've been around, right? More or less as a species. Our shelter has been around for us, portable shelter, right? And those things really haven't changed much, right? If you've camped in a tent or been in the yurt, it's not super comfortable, but they are pretty fast to set up and move. Then you've got stuff like tiny houses or kind of normal builds or Airstreams or RVs that either are very, very expensive or very, very slow to build. So there's never been anything that's both comfortable and really fast up, fast down kind of deployment. There's never been. And then when you start digging into the real needs of society, right? Not some bro and wanting to go to Coachella, right? And stay in a cool tent like a Jupe. But, you start looking at the 100 million people on the planet that are displaced from their home every year. If you think about that, 100 million people either as political refugees, climate refugees, disaster relief, homeless. There is no dignified solution for any of these folks. And so our long goal at Jupe is to use this glamping market and these initial setups of these villages as our Tesla Roadster, right? And the Model 3 will be serving those 100 million displaced folks.
Very cool. This kind of reminds me of almost like Uber's journey, right? Like you're starting with a beachhead market, which has a higher willingness to pay for this glamping use case.
Yeah.
And that when you're early on and you don't have economies of scale to be able to produce these things and you're still making learning, still evolving the product, et cetera, sounds like the logical place to start. But as you bring these things to scale, it seems like then there's the opportunity to bring the cost down and target this much bigger market. Is that a fair assessment?
That's the game, right? It's both Uber and Tesla are really the two most prominent examples of starting with a black car or a Roadster, right? And then eventually getting to Pool or the Model 3 or whatever comes after those things. I mean, as everybody knows that's listening to this thing, it's just so freaking hard to start something new, right? And particularly when you are playing around with atoms rather than bits and bytes, it's really dangerous and scary and a lot more fraught with death. And so we actually poked around a lot until we found this glamping thing. We had this modular product and we poked around a lot. We were trying weed farms, Peloton rooms, nursery. This, I think, is a good place to start.
That makes sense. And just so I understand the product properly here, it's like a 1-bedroom, right? That you give someone. It's like the size of a 1-bedroom.
It's like a portable little single bedroom. Yeah. So folks can check it out on the website or the Instagram to see what we've got. And our MVP is just this really high design, minimalist, future forward bedroom that drops off. And it can be off, or you can, for super fast setup, or you can plug it in and begin to add other things, that you can't really run off batteries as easily.
Interesting. And it comes with all of these amenities, like you mentioned Starlink internet, coffee, etc., right?
Yeah. So the single bedroom comes alone, the base model, but on some of them, we have added Starlink, we have added coffee, we have a bathroom now that's just coming out in the next couple of weeks. So we'll keep adding to the kit of parts till we've literally got a village on a truck, right? Or a city on a boat kind of thing.
That's awesome. Honestly, Jeff, I think this has been one of the most fascinating stories that we've heard yet on the pod. So thank you so much. We're just at about time here on this first episode. And I wanted to ask right before we sign off, you guys raised a round recently. Are you hiring, or is there anything else you'd like to plug on the pod?
Yeah, I think we are looking for folks that are really, really interested in this big problem of the 100 million displaced persons. And we're looking for folks all the way from firmware engineers and IoT folks to folks that want to go out and build community in the deep woods. So I would encourage folks that even if it's not something that we've got on our website, to write and express what their interests are.
Awesome. And if our listeners want to connect with you personally or follow you personally, where's the best platform to do so?
Yeah, so Twitter's good. I'm Prof Dumpster, PROF Dumpster.
I love that.
The name's stuck. And then it's Jupe Inc. So they can hit me up, DMs on Twitter or Instagram.
Awesome. There you have it, folks. Check these guys out at jupe.com and go ahead and follow Jeff on Twitter. I think that wraps up this first episode. Jeff, thank you so much for coming and sharing your insights. It's been a treat. It's been a privilege for me. And I'm excited to chat with you next time on part 2.
Hey, excited about part 2. Thanks.
Awesome. We'll see you later, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, and that wraps up today's episode. We really hope you enjoyed it. Now, just before I let you go, I wanted to reiterate one thing. We're trying to build the best podcast out there for aspiring entrepreneurs, and to do that, we need your help. The best way you can help us is by joining our Discord community. The link is in the description below, and then leaving us feedback. Tell us how we did. Tell us how we can improve. We're eagerly waiting to hear from you. Other than that, show us some love and follow us on Twitter at The Breakouts Pod. And I think that's everything I have for you. We'll see you next time on The Breakouts.